What's up, guys? I'm glad you're here. My name is Drake, and you're listening to the Double Click Podcast by Holy Hill Media. Awesome, man. Yeah, give our audience just a brief overview, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about Imperial.
Yeah, my name is Zach Freeman. I'm a political consultant here in the United States. My company, Imperial, operates here in the States and in Europe as well. I do a lot of political consulting, strategic advisement. We work a lot on campaigns. We do a lot of corporate work too, but our main focus is on trying to, ensure that our clients have what they need. And obviously, some of that has to do with their beliefs on the political spectrum. We do work with a certain class of clientele in the political space. I kind of like try to keep it as honed in as we can, but it's really an exciting thing to do. You meet a lot of amazing people and get to visit a lot of cool places too.
That's awesome, man. I guess quick question off that. What's the coolest place you've been to for work?
Oh, cool. Well, I go to London about once a month, and I really enjoy London. Yeah, it's one of the coolest cities in the world. You can meet anybody there. You can get anything you want to eat. It's really a pretty incredible place. It's been the center of the world for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. My buddy JP Edwards lives out there in London. He's from Texas, but he lives in London, and he just invited me to a London, Ireland trip in March. Have you been to Ireland?
I have, yeah.
Is the pub scene as cinematic as one American might?
I'm pretty biased towards the British pubs.
Okay.
There's this is kind of a inside baseball a little bit, but there's somewhat of a rivalry between the UK and Ireland. It's not. Yeah. They don't necessarily hate each other, but it's not been historically been the most friendly relationship, and so you find a lot of people taking sides. And I have to say, I think I prefer the British side, but enjoy Ireland.
Hopefully you don't have any clients in Ireland in the year to come. Amazing, man. Well, I appreciate that, man. What you do is super interesting. Like I told you before the call, I've just never seen this type of business model before. It's super interesting. I think I've been following you on, I think maybe Instagram for a while now. You're all over the place. And I was like, I got to talk to this guy, figure out what specifically it looks like in your day-to-day, what it looks like to scale the kind of business that you have, and even how you got into it. So that's kind of where I want to start, man. How did you get into this? I know you were a director of communications for the state of Alaska for, I think, 2.5 years or something like that. And I'm pretty sure that was 4 or 5 years ago. That's correct.
Yeah.
Went to school in Tennessee, but I guess I just want to know, man, how did you choose, I guess, this direction for school? And then how did you find this career? Do you have family in politics, or how did this come about?
No, not really. I kind of stumbled into it by accident. I always had an interest in the political space. Some of my early jobs were in the political space, and you realize over time that, you can do this for other people or you can do it for yourself. And, if you can find a way to scale it up and create a client base that's loyal to you and, happy with what you do, then you can make it into a sustainable business. So I actually started this company almost 12 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
And I did step out briefly for a couple of years to work in Alaska, as you mentioned. I was a communications director and press secretary, so I dealt with the media a lot. It was a great experience. I learned a ton. It really launched me into a lot of the other things that I've been doing. About 2 years ago, made the decision to start expanding what we do outside of the U.S. And so, we're unique in the sense that we're a referral only company. So, we don't pursue clients in the way that, we don't do outbound marketing. We don't do anything that would really, anything that would classify as marketing really outside of our existing clientele. There's a few reasons for that. For one, you get the best outcomes with clients when they want to hire you, right? I mean,
Right.
there's some benefit to being a little bit exclusionary and saying, this is the type of groups that we work for. Secondarily, it protects us from working with bad clients, frankly. If I work with somebody that I trust and they say, hey, you need to work with this other group, I like them, it just creates that kind of initial level of trust. You can work easier in that environment. So, that's not to say we would never expand beyond being a referral only company, but it's worked for us, especially in the political space where it's all about who you know. That just frees me up to focus on networking, building relationships, making friendships across the world. Really and truly that old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's really true. So spending time to do that, I did get a degree. I graduated from Liberty University. But practically speaking, the experience that you get, the relationships that you build out from your own efforts are really what's going to set the stage for you to have success in your business.
Yeah, that's so true, man. It's interesting, man, because I'm hearing a few different things that are, I guess, kind of aligning for me and understanding how the trajectory came about, how you ended up starting your business. Now, it started off with this curiosity, right, within business, but then within your experience, you stepped out, worked in the state of Alaska. I'm assuming that experience was pivotal in you deciding, hey, it's time for me to do this exclusively independently with Imperial. What was that I guess that decision process like after you were done working for Alaska? As a director of communications, what was that internal dialogue like? Did you talk to the wife? Did you talk to a mentor? How did you decide that now we're going to go exclusively Imperial?
Yeah, I think I always knew it was going to go that direction eventually. My thought process was get as much experience as you can in as many different areas as you can, so you can figure out what you're good at, what you enjoy doing. My company's been in the background. Even when I worked in the state of Alaska, I still had employees who were running a company. So it was it was always plan A, right? This is the company that you build is meant to sustain you and your family for extended periods of time. And, you figure out, like I said, what you're good at, what you like. There was never really a moment of, I'm done with all of this. I'm going to go back into the consulting firm. It was kind of like, you knew it would happen eventually. And of course, working in government, you typically work in either 2 or 4 year cycles anyway. So,
right.
You get hired to work for a particular legislature, and then that legislature ends. And the question is, who's in charge of the next one? Do they want to retain you? Do they want to fire you? A lot of that is really more politically controlled than it has to do with job performance. It's just, you can be incredible at your job, but if the people that you work for lose power, then you're out,
Yeah.
So you have to kind of build up some adaptability in the political space. Obviously the Biden administration is drawing to a close. There are 4,000 to 5,000 political appointees. They're going to be out of a job on January 20th, right? It's just the nature of what happens. And so, building my business in a way to withstand that has been obviously a big challenge. Because politics is cyclical. You have to find other ways to make the company run in seasons when politics aren't running, which is increasingly less in this country. But it's important for you to be able to build out time to rest and recover and spend time with your family. And that's what this business gives me, is flexibility. It gives me freedom to operate how I want to operate, to live how I want to live, and to serve my clients as well as I can.
Love it, man. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
33.
33. Oh, you're young as hell. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so let me zoom in there for a second, because I imagine this is an old man's game, no? Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think increasingly, the guys who have been doing it forever are starting to retire some, but it is still, it's still a relationship-based industry in the sense that, those old guys vouching for you does mean something. Even if they retire, it's kind of like, oh, well, I used this guy for 40 years. Who does he recommend? Right. It's kind of it's not a rule, but ultimately the best way you can position yourself is just to be friendly and approachable and helpful. And, if you can do those things, you're going to succeed in any industry. It doesn't matter what age you are.
Very true. Very true. Okay, so I want to dive in a little bit deeper and get into some of the more granular perspective of your business. What does it look like? What are you actually selling, right? You offer a service. It's not a product business. It's a service business. I would assume there's probably contractual terms where it's like, hey, we'll do this for the next 6, 12, 36 months. What does your business model look like if I'm reaching out to hire you for something? What's that process look like? And then we'll go into a little bit more of your day-to-day, but we'll start there.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of consulting is that your job is to do what your clients need, and practically, what we sell the most is advice, right? If a political organization comes to us and they say, we know we want to do X, Y, and Z on social media, we can put together a plan for them and do the nuts and the bolts and the execution of it. But it's more than just executing, a strategy or a plan on social media. It's asking the questions, Can you get any earned media out of this? Can you go beyond earned media and build a project off of this? What relationships do you need in order for this to become successful, right? It's this entire business is relationship based, and that, the value that I can bring to a client is really centrally located in the value that I've built with other relationships. It's funny
Wow.
when you start to do this little network. I have this networking chart that I keep, and I update it pretty regularly because when I meet new people, I like to know how I was introduced to them, right? Like it's just this big web, this giant chart of people that I've met over the last 5 or 6 years. It's funny when those circles start to intersect with each other, right? You have this kind of, okay, this was maybe my high school, college web, and some of the people who started to now reach into the European web, and you just kind of, a lot of those introductions are ones that you make for them. But it's funny, it's like, when a friend from one space of your life ends up really hitting it off with a friend from another space of your life, it's just kind of a funny, like,
Yeah.
the world is a small place, and ultimately the value that you bring as a consultant or as a business owner is in the connections that you can make for your clients. So that's what I spend my time doing, and it's what I like doing. And I love to go do lunches and golf and coffees, and I'm lucky to have a great team that carries out kind of the day-to-day nuts and bolts of what we do. And of course, when you're needed, you step in, you do that. Like I have someone on maternity leave right now, so we pick up the slack, and it's just a business that runs well. So I'm grateful for it. I like what it enables us to do.
Amazing. So could you walk me through just what your team looks like? I know you work with a variation of contractors depending on the project, depending on the client. But what are the responsibilities of your team? Because it sounds to me like you're definitely in a founder's position where you're not you don't have your operational hat on most of the time. You're typically networking. I would assume selling, managing relationships, and then overseeing operations, but you're not necessarily in the
Yeah,
day to day.
we have a director of operations that runs kind of all the day to day. Make sure that our deliverables land on time, that things are placed properly, that they're edited and they don't have mistakes. We've got account executives that kind of make sure they're the first point of contact for our clients. Typically I focus more on the international side of things. So when we've got elected officials, former or current candidates, political parties overseas that are looking for some advice, I typically handle the most of that stuff. It's kind of it's unique in that the American political system is in many respects the envy of the world, right? I mean, there are other political systems that can do great things. There's benefits like to the parliamentary system in the UK, for example. And as much as people complain about gridlock and you can never get anything done, the US system of government really is well admired around the world, because it is a slow moving process that has a lot of checks and balances on power. Like it just by nature, it is tougher to operate a corrupt environment here than compared to other countries in the world. Like it's just a good system. Doesn't mean it doesn't have its problems, but it's actually, it can be a good thing that governments can't just come in and make sweeping changes constantly. Like sometimes that's needed, right? Like I think that's a season is upcoming here in the next year, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years where you see a lot of really sweeping change, but the checks and balances in the country enable it to operate smoothly. I ultimately, the people that we deal with internationally, they're politically right of center, but they're practical, they're pragmatic. They want to know what the benefits of the American system are, how they might apply them in their country. So it's a really unique opportunity. And, of course, we do host a lot of like delegations. So when groups from other countries say, we really would like to come to Washington, D.C. and get plugged in with the government, we'll help them to get their agenda put together and help them set up some meetings with congressmen and senators and, just to come in and build relationships. And that's all we're doing is enabling relationships to be built. So it's a really rewarding and fun experience, and very different from, really frankly, very different from anything else that most of my peers have done. I like that.
Yeah, this is super interesting to me. I think the value it keeps coming back to this relationship building, this networking, this connecting. I do want to ask a simple question. You said that you mapped out your networking on a chart. Is that like a Miro chart, like a Notion? Do you have just notes?
I just use Keynote. I mean,
Okay.
I keep it really simple. You at some point your chart gets too big to really manage easily,
Right.
and I think over time you kind of realize, okay, some of these relationships that I built are extremely pivotal, right? They've led to a lot of other ones. And some of them, they're people that you meet once and, for whatever reason, or maybe no reason, they never materialize in anything else. I mean, there's a little bit of cleanup, I think, that involves with that chart. We're like, okay, it was great to meet this person, but it didn't really mean anything in the context of, the broader network. They're great people. I would definitely have lunch with them. But, what you're able to do is map out, the pathways, the channels of influence, right? It's like, and in a way you're asking yourself, who are the people that really want me to succeed, right? Like I
Mm.
have this policy for all my friends and contacts. It's like my Rolodex is open for you, right? Like I'm not going to gatekeep all the people that I know. Like if you have a good reason you need to meet somebody and I know them, I'm happy to introduce you to them. I don't expect anything in return.
Yeah.
What that does is it makes them want to reciprocate, right? It's like everybody knows different people. I know a lot of different people in a lot of different places, but I don't know everybody. So when I need to meet a lawmaker in another country, it's like, oh, who do I know that might have that connection? I know who I can recall quickly. Like, okay, this person probably knows. I can text them. It's just this. It's not. I don't call it transactional in the sense that like there's an immediate expectation of return, but it's just a transparency. It's like, hey, you're my friend. I want you to succeed. I want you to have what you need, and that's reciprocated to me. And so that's been the best model that I've found for expanding my network. Is like, be free with your contacts. Be willing to introduce people. Like, obviously, be tactful. Like,
Sure.
you don't want to like give out a celebrity's phone number just so somebody can ask for an autograph. Like there's some rules to this, but generally, like if you've got a friend who's looking to like, get involved in a space and somebody that can help them out, make the intro, make the contact. Like it costs you nothing to do that in most cases. And, and it always pays in the long run.
What's your requirement there? Obviously, it's probably super, one, subjective, but two, just depending on the situation specifically. But do you have any rules of thumb for I won't connect this person if X, Y, or Z? Like, is the qualifying factor to connect, one of your friends or somebody, with somebody else that in your Rolodex? Like, it has to be mutually beneficial. Like, what is and it's probably something you probably just like feel it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all case by case basis, right? It's like, you don't want to do anything that would damage your relationship with that person, either of those people. Sometimes you may get into a situation where, you've got two friends that are competing for the same prize, and you have to be careful to not, pick favorites in that scenario. And you just for the sake of your own friendships. But ultimately, you have to rely on your intuition and just say, all right, I feel like this is a good match. I feel like this is not a good match. And once you build up that intuition and kind of have a radar to see these things, it's like if you're not sure what to do, it's usually fine to wait a couple days and think about it.
Yeah.
But that's really uncommon. It's like, I trust the people that I interact with to the point that I trust their decision-making ability, and frankly, I just don't interact with a lot of people that I don't trust. So, I'm not,
That's good.
if somebody wants to, meet someone that I know or meet somebody that I work with, it's just kind of like, as long as I know them and I know their motives are good, I don't have any problem.
That's good. Yeah. Keep the network clean, essentially. Yeah. Makes it easy. So speaking of this relational intuition, speaking of networking, what would you say are like the core competencies when somebody wants to hire you? What are the boxes they're hoping to check? Obviously, there's this power of referral. Somebody they've been working with for 40 years might be retiring. Hey, I know this guy, Zach with Imperial. He's great at what he does. Obviously, that carries weight. But what are the core competencies in your industry for that somebody would be looking at to hire Imperial?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think obviously the referral carries weight. In most cases, it's a huge vouch right out of the gate for anybody who's looking to hire us. But you know, it's important in the political space to be able to read a situation, to read a room, and that requires a lot of contextual knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows who likes who doesn't like who, what are the news stories that are current right now? What do I need to know about the situation, before you walk in? And I think there's this fine line, and I don't know that I'll ever perfect the balancing of it, but it's a line between knowing enough to be helpful and kind of opening the door to learn more information, and coming in acting like you know more than you actually do. And I
Mm,
always err towards the former, right? Like
mm.
it's way easier to get with a client and say, hey, help me, catch me up to speed, like help me understand the situation, let me do some research, than it is to say, oh yeah, I was reading about this, I know about this, you know, I've read all about your problem, and here's what we need to do, right? It's really easy to cross that line without intending to, because you don't want to look like you don't know anything about the
Sure.
situation that they're looking to solve.
Have to have something to offer.
But it's really easy to get accidentally caught in a bad situation, not even because you have any sort of like malintent, but just because you got out over your skis a little bit. I'll give you an example of this. This happened
Yeah,
to
I
me
was gonna
like
ask for an
10 years
example if you
ago.
had one.
Okay, so I was doing this campaign in Texas, and you know, I went with the candidate, and we met with the local party chair, and so I was talking, you know, he had asked the question, how do you plan to win this race? And so I'm this candidate's consultant. I'm laying out the whole plan, right? Like, I mean, I'm like 24 at this point, probably. So I'm excited, you know, I'm aggressive. So I'm laying out this plan, and I mispronounced the name of the county this guy was running in, right?
Ooh,
And I
okay.
didn't know that I had mispronounced it, right? Because
Yeah.
I had flown into Texas, I was firing, I was ready to go, you know, and the county chair was like, it's pronounced, you know, like he corrected me in this meeting, and I was just like, there's no way to come back from this, right? You can't, right? You've made a
Gotta
critical
take the L.
error right out of the gate. You know, it didn't necessarily mean anything in the term of, you know, I wasn't fired from the campaign or anything like that, but it was an early lesson for me to be like, hey, do your research before you show up,
Mm,
because you know, it would have been really easy to avoid that. That was a really easy thing to have, you know, an easy mistake to avoid that I should have. But I learned that lesson young, right? And it taught me like basically the Dale Carnegie principle of like listen first and talk second, right? Like listen to what people are saying before you explain why you think this is the right pathway. So as you get better at that process, these things clean themselves up, right? It's like ultimate, and I'm a big fan of Dale Carnegie, by the way. I mean, I have 100
come on.
copies of How to Win Friends and Influence People in my
Yeah.
office, and I give them away all the time. You know, it is really, if you want to be good at your job, you have got to find a way to listen, be genuine, be authentic, be interested, and really serve them well. And that, you know, that can mean different things to different people. You know, there are times where I have no choice but to get up at 2 a.m. to take a phone call, right? And that's because I have a client that I care about that needs something. It's not a regular occurrence. You know, it might just be a one-off thing, but you know, I live often 8, 9, 10 hours time difference from some of my clients. So you just have to be willing to go the extra mile and be available, and be a good listener.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Now, you, I've even seen it on your website, but essentially you're only taking clients on by referral, as you mentioned earlier. Somebody reaches out and they don't know somebody that you know, they're probably not going to be able to work with you. I imagine it's because you want to protect your network and that you take that very seriously based on Carnegie literature and everything you've said so far. But how do you scale a business like this? Because it sounds like so much of the value that you provide is in your brain, right? It's in your strategy, your experience, your network. How do you scale a business like this? Is it just getting better, charging more, practically speaking, or is it, how do you grow?
Yeah, there's a facet to that. I mean, there's a competitive nature to business, and that you need to be, you know, you need to be providing value that's equivalent to what you're extracting in terms of resource from a client. You know, obviously there's deliverables, right? I mean, there's things like videos, there's things like, you know, social media, there's fundraising appeals, things that are practical that we deliver on a schedule that bring value to a client, and those are
Sure.
kind of the practical day-to-day needs of our clients that we do all the time. You know, but where you're really able to scale in this particular space is your knowledge of the system, because like there are 100,000 people who say, okay, I work in Washington D.C., I work in government, I can help you navigate whatever, right? But they're all in different spaces, they're all in different niches, and you have to find the niche that you're most interested in, passionate about. So I mean, I'm politically right of center. I only work for organizations and candidates and people that are at least center to politically right of center.
Sure.
You know, that it isn't, it's not to say that like I wouldn't work with a corporate group if, you know, their CEO was left of center. It depends on what they're trying to achieve, right? But
Right.
ultimately the reason for doing referral only is it's really difficult to be great at work that you're not somewhat passionate about, or at least care about and want to see succeed. It's really hard for me to like go all out for a client doing a project that I don't want to be successful, right? So it's like sometimes you get offered a great paycheck, you get offered, great connections or something to do this project, but it's better if you're not feeling it, it's better to just say, let me refer you to somebody else, right? Like, because then you're still getting the benefit of that reciprocal kind of, I'm going to refer this business to somebody else. They're going to appreciate it. Should they find themselves in a similar situation, maybe they'll refer something back to me later. Not an expectation, but it's better to just focus on what you care about, right? It's better to, and there was a really, really good piece of advice that I got a few years ago from a friend in venture capital. And he was saying, you can only wear one suit at a time. You can only eat one steak at a time. You can only live in one house at a time. You can only drive one car at a time. And at some point, money just becomes more money. Of course, there's this kind of happiness equilibrium that we're all chasing in terms of our income and our business and how much we want to scale. For me, answering that question early was pretty important facet, because you have unlimited potential in this space, right? I mean, I could work 90 hours a week and make an absolute fortune, but I would hate my life, right? It's like I have a wife, I have 3 kids, I want to spend time with them while they're little. So I really get the freedom and flexibility to decide how much I want to work, how much I want to travel. Do I want to go out on a prospecting trip, or do I want to stay home, right? There's a lot of choice involved with this, and it all comes back to scalability, but it all answers the question, what kind of life are you using this business to create for yourself? And business, like my friend in venture capital, he says money is just a tool, right? Money is just a tool. It's not to be worshipped. It's not to be hoarded. It's not to be wasted, right? It's just a tool to create other outcomes. So, obviously there's the practical. You have to pay your, make payroll. You have to pay rent. You have to pay insurance. All these kind of things when you operate a business. But ultimately, if that business isn't serving your ultimate goal, then it's not a business that you want to hold on to.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you just mentioned, you've mentioned this phrase, I think twice now, but just the sustainable part of your business, sustainability within business obviously is predictable cash flow. You sell a service, and I'm assuming that's within contract. Now, I can imagine that obviously going in and out of political seasons, there's always some sort of political season that you're in, especially if you're going to be working with corporate clients, which I want to get to here in a sec. But when you look at the sustainable part of your business from a cash flow perspective, do you guys have long-term, like year-over-year clients, including like campaign clients? Like, how does that work?
What's the average? We do keep year-over-year clients in the political space. Not every political organization is campaign related. Some of them advocate year-round in their respective states or in Washington, D.C. We work for a lot of those organizations. And so that creates some stability for us in terms of cash flow. We don't really look at campaigns as part of even our cash flow equation. It's kind of just whatever we have the bandwidth and interest in doing, we take it on, and, it helps us to invest in some new areas or expand in other areas, or to generate more prospects, whatever that might be. I started, just on the note of sustainability, I started about 2 years ago going to London. Initially I went, I think, once every 4 or 5 months, then it became once every 3 months. Then it became, and I got a couple of clients in London now. So it's kind of a, once every month, a month and a half, maybe once every 2 months, or around the holidays or something, go, but you fill your days, right? You don't go over there to sightsee. You don't go over there to, I've done all that before, but you don't go over there to sit in your hotel room and waste time, right? It's like, I have the benefit of an 8-hour time difference from where I spend most of my time to London. And, that means when I land in London, right, it's, typically midnight back at home, or it's, 2 a.m. back at home. So all my clients in the US are sleeping, right? I get this 5 to 6, maybe 8-hour window where all the other people that I normally would interact with in a given day are not available, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this 8 hours of time where it's like, all right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to meet new people, I'm going to take coffees, I'm going to get introductions, and just pack my schedule back to back to back to back all day long, right? And then you get done with the day and you're exhausted, right? And you got to do some maintenance for your clients back home, and it's a process. It's a little bit of a science you got to figure out, but I think that the sustainability of our business is whether or not we're continually acquiring relationships. And once you get into a circle, it's much easier to operate in that circle and feel comfortable with the people that exist there. A lot to learn in any space, obviously, but sustainability has direct correlation to momentum. Do you allow your business to become stagnant? Do you get complacent with the relationships that you have and say, I know plenty of people, I'll just coast for a while? I mean, the second you do that, your business is gonna plateau. So you've kind of, this is, in a lot of ways, it's less of a business and more of a practice. It takes effort constantly to build your network, maintain your network, clean your network. But at the end of the day, it's like, your relationships are going to matter a lot more than, necessarily what product I might sell. It's like, people don't hire you simply because you're good. I mean, ideally you would be, but they actually hire you because they like you.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the central tenet of the Carnegie model, is like, and I have another story about that I'll tell you at some point, but yeah, people have to like you. I mean, you have to be friendly and approachable. You're not going to win the business.
Yeah, I want to lean in there. I mean, that's good, and I think there's value here, because I think especially for small businesses, first time business owners, freelancers, it doesn't matter. Any time in business when especially when you're first getting into business, you really have to immerse yourself, whether that's into the geographic area you're serving or online into the industry that you want to target. And there's just an element of just a little bit of a hustle that you have to have, right? You have more time than you have clients in the beginning. So shaking hands, making good impressions, nurturing those relationships are super important. I want to kind of lean into that, practically speaking, and I do want that story as well. When you look at managing relationships, you're running a company and you're flying all over the world, essentially in London once a month. How are you managing these relationships on a regular basis? And is that a practical thing, or do you just kind of like intuitively high EQ, where you just kind of know when to touch base with people? Do you have reminders in your calendar to check in on,
a
Johnny?
little of all that. Okay. I think the best rule of thumb is when someone happens to cross your mind that you've interacted with, just ping them and say hi. Right? You don't have to have a question or a favor or anything particular to ask. Just say, hey man, how's it going? Was thinking about you. How's your business doing? How's your family doing? Whatever you feel like you have grounds to ask, right? It's just that touch point, when you can create a touch point with someone, or show up, every once in a while and take them to lunch, it just gives them a good impression. It's and it doesn't have to be for any particular immediate reason, right? I mean, I have people that I've been interacting with, I'd love to do business with. I've been interacting with them for 2 or 3 years, and it hasn't led to anything yet. I've had circumstances like that where it took 2 or 3 years of interactions to get the trust built to then, get on the contract with somebody. So it's a little bit of everything. I mean, everyone responds differently to communication. Some people don't like to be texted out of the blue. Some people would prefer email. Some people would like it if you'd call them or FaceTime them, or, you just need to get to know people enough to be like, all right, what's the best way I can connect with this person, even if it's for 2 minutes. I mean, I have people that'll call, once a year and talk for 5 minutes and just say, how's your family? It's impactful to me, right? Because I recognize that they were thinking about me and that they care about me, right? It's just a nice exercise, and it keeps you sharp too, because it's really easy when you're interacting with hundreds, 200, 500 people, you forget some of them quickly, right? You can't remember everyone, right? It's like, even if you're really good at names and faces, like there's an element of this, like the sheer volume of people you're going to meet, it just does not allow you to remember them all. So it helps you to stay in the forefront of people's minds when you are making those connections and touch points regularly. And again, it may not be for anything immediate, but I'm a long-term thinker when it comes to business relationships. I would rather chase a long-term business relationship 5 years from now than I would a quick contract today. And you almost have to have that mindset in this space, because everyone else is looking for a quick dollar today. They're looking to get the money in as fast as they can. They've got to worry about overhead, and the relationships are secondary. I'm exactly the opposite of that, right? I would rather be, have a more challenging financial picture in the short term if I knew that the long-term relationships were going to lead more later. So in practice, they do both. Uh, but does that make sense?
100% that makes sense. I want to get back to that for a second. Did you get to that because I'll ask you this, and maybe I'm an asshole for asking, but like when you get to a certain place in business, it's easy to say that, you know, I want to chase the long-term relationships, but also, and I don't want to just chase the quick contract because you're successful. But also, there's a lot of businesses, in what I'm assuming based on talking to you and in the interactions that we've had together, you got to where you were because you chased the 5-year long term. I'm actually going to sow some seeds here versus, you know, taking the topsoil and taking what I can get.
Yeah.
When you're looking at that, I want to, I guess, not even ask you the question, but to address the fact that most people don't. Most people chase the quick contract. Why is that damaging, especially long term for a company?
Well, clients can see it quickly. You know, if you're just there to collect and run, if you're not serving them well, then it's going to be a short-lived tenure anyway, right? It's like, in this space, you can't afford to make unnecessary enemies, and you certainly don't want to make enemies on the basis that you didn't work very well or you weren't good at your job. It's like, if they don't agree with you, that's one thing. It's like they can say, okay, I don't like Zach because I disagree with him on X, Y, and Z. That's a different kind of dislike than I don't like Zach because he took a big giant check from me and did nothing, right? That's completely different reason to not like Zach, right? And I never want to be that guy that people say, oh yeah, he just didn't pan out. He didn't do what he said he could do. He didn't give me the attention that I wanted, whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
you know, you have to be a little bit more long-term focused to recognize that, you know, the long-term loss of chasing a short-term contract is much bigger than the short-term gain. You know, and so when you're starting out, yes, the practical nature is you need some clients, but you know, the best thing to do would be to find 1 or 2 clients to start with and just do it really well. You know, serve them well, make sure they're really happy, make sure that they know you'd appreciate their referrals if they have friends that need help. You know, there's a little bit of humility that comes in early to, you know, it is challenging to get into the upper echelons of this space without having people help you along, right? It's like, and it's not that you're just asking for these big giant favors or you're asking for, you know, money that you don't intend to pay back or anything like that. But it's just, you want to be somebody they trust and somebody they like and somebody they want to spend time with. And if you can't do those things, you're going to find a really low ceiling to what you can accomplish in that space.
Yeah. Now, did you learn that early on, the hard way? Or was that something you kind of always, maybe it was advice you got from a mentor, family member, whoever, that said, hey, chase the long-term relationships because, first of all, relational equity is a thing, and it's probably the deepest, most rooted equity you could find in business that you can create in business. Is that something you learn the hard way by like, hey, I have a business, I need some contracts. Let me just get anybody, everybody. Because, you know, like you said earlier too, though, it's like the reality of consulting is very much you do what your clients need you to do. So therefore, if I sell to them, their check cashes, I can figure it out, right? There's less of this element of, and we'll even say this early on, there's less of an awareness to know you think you can. Your ego is bigger than your experience, right? So then you think you can solve this person's problem when in fact you probably should have passed that to somebody else, missed the paycheck because, you know, you're preserving your reputation. I think that it's easy for consultants or even anybody in business to miss that early on because they want the check or their ego is bigger than their experience. How did you learn that?
Well, I mean, I would say that was me for a long time. You know, that there's an element in the space when you're young and you're inexperienced, you know, there's an element of faking it until you make it that I think is unavoidable.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to transition from faking it to knowing it. And, you know, that happened, you know, it still happens for me every day, right? I mean, it's not to say that I don't have an idea what I'm doing in most circumstances, but, you know, you're going to learn stuff every day and you have to be open to different directions, different channels, different ideas. You know, none of us have a monopoly on good ideas. And so that's part of having a good team around you. I think as it relates to, you know, not getting ahead of your skis, like I mentioned earlier, it's like just have the humility to ask a lot of questions, you know, and if you can do that and do it in a way where you're asking intelligent, thoughtful questions, you know, I think most clients are going to look at that and say, okay, he's working with me, not just he's working for me, right?
Yeah.
They want to partner in what they're trying to achieve normally. So, of course, you have exceptions to that where people just say, hey, I want you to go do this. I don't want to hear anything else about it. This is what I want. Just go do it. But normally, I'd say 95% of the time, the people you interact with in a client relationship are looking to build something with you, and they're hiring you because they feel like you can provide expertise, skills, relationships, connections that they don't already maybe have.
Yeah.
And that's the central part of the business.
Yeah. I think that's powerful though, because there's this there's this transition from faking it till you make it until actually having some sort of competency because you have experience, and it doesn't matter how much education you have or how successful your friends or your mentor is. At some point you need to cut your teeth, and you're going to chip one or two along the way. It's just the nature of business. I think when people are afraid to make that transition from passion to competency, that's when they usually hit a wall in their ability to scale or even the quality of work that they deliver. At some point in time, they have to recognize that their passion cannot compensate that long for that, for that duration of time for competency. Passion can't replace competency in a lot of areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I might be able to sell you and get you on a call, get you to sign a contract. But if I have a hole in my bucket, my contracts are going to lapse. My contracts are going to lapse. My reputation is going to lapse. The referrals are going to die out. All of this. So it's interesting. It's interesting to hear how this works in your industry. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your corporate clients. It's different in the sense that it sounds like there's a lot of PR involved in that, and a lot of maybe messaging strategy. I don't know how much you get into branding and marketing, stuff like that. I know you do some of that as well. I'm not sure for the corporate clients, but as it pertains to the corporate clients, what is your typical relationship with what are those kind of contracts look like? Not in the detail, but essentially what you're providing them. Is it very similar to the political clients? And is that the same thing built on referral network?
Yeah, it can be. It's all built on the referral network. I mean, you have to consider that most people that are involved in politics are also involved in business, right? Whether they own a business or whether they participate on a board, it's every company has needs, right? And this economic situation for the last 4 years has forced companies to address whether they want to solve those needs in-house or whether they want to outsource them. Oftentimes, and you would know this from the company that you operate that I've interacted with, that it's going to be a lot more affordable and effective for somebody to call in somebody on contract and say, hey, I need a video done, right? Than it is for them to say, I'm going to hire an in-house video staff and an in-house video editor and buy all the equipment. I mean, you're talking about, a $5,000 to $10,000 one-time fee, project-based, or a $100,000 to $200,000 ongoing investment, right? It's in some economies, the company might opt for the bigger investment. They might opt for the, more in-house control. But in the economy for the last 4 years has not been particularly good. A lot of my friends have been laid off, right? It's inflation has been nuts. Like it's been difficult for people to grow and expand their businesses over the last even beyond the last 4 years. I mean, since the start of COVID, it really was kind of a reset. But I'm not trying to be political. I think most people would probably agree with that statement.
No, yeah, I think both sides of the spectrum would
but,
agree. But
when companies are looking to say, hey, I'd like to save some money, I still need these things done. They look to companies like ours to say, can you get these done for cheaper than it would cost for me to hire employees to do this? And so again, it comes back to being a Swiss Army knife and being well connected in your network. It's not uncommon for us to field a request and say, there's none of this that we can do in-house, but we're going to line all of it up for you, right? And that's just the peace of mind that you're selling them, right? It's like, I brought a client to you guys to do video at one point, and they said, hey, the election's in 6 days. We need a video and we want to place it. Can you get it done for us, right? And so, when it's logistically possible, we do it. We'll hire a contractor. We'll do it ourselves if we have to do it ourselves. But at the end of the day, it's kind of how versatile are you going to choose to be?
yeah,
It would be easy to say, yeah, 6 days isn't enough time. We need more, we need a 2-week minimum on turnaround. It's like, yeah, you can say all that, you can enforce all that as a creative agency, and that's your choice. But if you don't take that business and serve them well, somebody else is going to. So it's a question of, you balance it, right? I mean, you have other things in life you have to take care of, you have business you have to consider, but when you can serve someone well, you should. And that's just a good bottom line, whether it's in business or in any other facet of life. It's like, you create rules to protect yourself, but you're the one that gets to decide if you're going to enforce them. So
Yeah.
I really, I try not, but at the same time, I mean, every yes that you say is an automatic no to something else. So
Fair.
finding the balance that works best for you is an important facet of this company and operating in a successful business.
Yeah. What is the balance of operational leadership and kind of field work that you're doing right now?
I mean, I pretty much do networking and relationship exclusively.
Gotcha.
Our director of operations does a great job of making sure everything gets out the door on time. We want to make sure everything that we put out is high quality, that it's right, that it's accurate, that it's timely. Because everything that we do is a reflection on our clients. It's not necessarily a direct reflection on us. And often we're behind the curtain. I mean, most people don't even know that we exist, that we're even participating in the process of information getting from point A to point B. They just see our client and themselves as the consumer, and they don't know anything about how it got there. And so we're mindful of the fact that our attention to detail, our quality matters, because if it doesn't, then it only looks bad on our clients. And of course, your client looks bad, then eventually you'll be shown the door. So we care about that a lot. In terms of our time focus, right now we've just finished an election cycle, so there's less of that kind of stuff going on. But that's not to say there's not less going on. It's just different stuff. So
sure.
This is Christmas, New Year's, right? This is the season where pretty much everyone just decides to take a break for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's a nice little reset button for everybody. But January 3rd starts the new Congress. That's next Friday from when we're recording this, and that's not very long, right? So we had this little break, and then it's going to be right back into it again.
Yeah, very interesting. Your COO. How did you find your COO?
I have worked with our COO for a long time. Actually, I had a publication at one point when I was in college that was designed for college students to be able to kind of write about things on campus without any fear of retribution, because it was just a bigger platform. It was before a lot of the other, campus reform and other groups came along. It was kind of the precursor to those, and my CEO was an editor there at that publication, and so I've known them a long time. I've worked with them a long time. I trust them a lot. They do really good work, and you have to be really, really cautious and careful about how you build out your team, because, for one, any cancerous person is going to cause a problem within your team. You need to have people that you like, people that you trust, people that are going to be honest with you at the end of the day. Not overstaffing is also an important part of running a business. It's easy, you obviously want to balance between being understaffed, being overstaffed, but it's easy in this space to say, oh, I'm going to hire these people because we have these clients that are going to need it. And, you're doing a lot of forecasting, a lot of projecting, and it's very easy to get overextended when you're hiring lots of people. And of course, it's a lot easier to just not hire someone than it is to hire them and have to let them go later. So being really deliberate about who you want, why you want them, and for what purpose, deciding how you want to structure their employment, or whether it's going to be a W-2 or a contract. There's a lot of logistics involved with that. Obviously, dealing with the tax liabilities of having employees is its own thing. It's the least favorite part of business for me. I hate dealing with it. Anything to do with the IRS or any state level, Department of Labor's, unemployment. It's like there's so much. I get why people are afraid to have businesses. I really do. And there are days when I wake up and I'm like, this is stupid. I'm done with this. I mean, the business part is easy, right? The relationship parts are easy. It's like, I can write a contract, I can execute a contract all day, but when I have to argue with the IRS or somebody else about a payment that they lost, or, it's the bureaucracy of government, and every business owner knows what I'm talking about. It's like, I've had the IRS tell me, you owe me $700, and then I pay it, and then they send me a check for $700. I say, you overpaid. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's unbelievably ridiculous that they can't get their stuff in order. But they're a big agency. This is the headache of business, though. It's not that the relationships are easy. The business carry out the products, the services, the strategic advice. That's all easy. That's stuff we can do largely second nature in a lot of cases. But it's the nuts and bolts of business. It's why you need a good COO. It's like you need somebody to pay attention to that stuff, and so you can stay focused on what you're best at.
Yeah. Looking into 2025, can business owners, speaking of business owners and their pains, can they look at 2025 with hope? Obviously, we have somebody in office that we would assume would favor the brave in small to medium sized business, but obviously, looking at this. I mean, you would know far more than I would, but I think there's hope at a corporate level all the way down to the small guys. Is that fair to have that hope, and why would they?
I haven't seen this much enthusiasm for commerce in a long time. Pre-COVID, everyone was doing pretty well in the stock market. People were feeling comfortable investing in their businesses. I think anytime you have a business person in the White House, people are going to have a little bit more comfort. Whether it's proper or not, is a different question. But President Trump has a track record of caring about business owners, and I think because of that, there were a lot of tax breaks during his first administration, a reduction in regulation. I think that's going to be a priority for his next administration. So I sense a lot of enthusiasm among business owners. Even business owners who don't necessarily like President Trump's personality, his tweets, there are a lot of people that are saying, what, I just want to be able to operate my business. Like, that's it. Like, I don't really care about all this other kind of identity politics. I'm done dealing with this. Like, I'm tired of gas being $4.50 a gallon. If you're in California or Washington or Oregon, I'm tired of, having to pay like ridiculous amounts of money in payroll taxes. I'm tired of having to, I'm tired of having to pay $300 every time I go to the grocery store. Like, there's just this tiredness that I think is driving interest in, like, how are we going to climb out of this, right? Like, there is a small sliver of society that has not felt the effect of inflation, but I would say it's very small. And business owners are, we're all looking at the cost of our goods going up. We're looking at the cost of labor going up. We're talking, but what we're not seeing is the value of the dollar returning yet. So, in effect, what that means is we're having to think about charging our clients more money to deliver less product, right? It's kind of, and nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So I think the hope that you're talking about is the return of kind of equilibrium in that sense, where you're like, okay, I'm going to start being able to charge what I think we're actually providing again, right? Like, we're going to charge a rate that's commensurate with what somebody's getting, because inflation is starting to reduce, and the cost of goods is starting to come back to a level where it can be sustainable. A lot of business is beyond our control, but the things that are within our control, those relationships, how we're perceived within our networks, those are really completely separate from the nuts and bolts cost of operating a company.
Yeah. It's interesting, man, because I think that the general population, especially small to medium-sized business owners, doing anywhere from $500,000 to 20 million, such a wide range. But I think the majority of people aren't necessarily looking at any specific policy beyond just having hope in who's in the presidency. And what are the things that small to medium-sized business owners could or should be looking at a federal or state to local level to ensure the health of the longevity of their business?
Yeah, I think they've been doing it over the last 4 years. I mean, if you look at the migration numbers out of California, for example, business owners made practical decision that they just couldn't be profitable there anymore, right? And there are other factors at play, crime, whether or not there's prosecution for crime. There's a lot that goes into that decision. Obviously, there's a cost to closing a business too, but you've seen net migration influxes to places like Florida, Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas, where people are saying, I have a skill, I have a good product, but I need to create it and sell it in an environment that isn't going to tax me to death. This is not a new phenomenon for business owners. Business owners are always looking for ways to increase profits and reduce liabilities. But now it just kind of is to the point where they don't have a choice. They have to do it. And it's either you operate in the black somewhere else, or you stay where you are and you run in the red. And that's not a decision a business owner wants to make, but that hand is forced a lot of times. So I think they'll continue. They should have hope. I mean, I'm hopeful that some of the tax rates at the federal level will be reduced, which will only be made possible if the size of government is reduced. If they're spending less money, they'll need to bring in less money. But we have a $35 to $40 trillion deficit as a country that is debt that we're paying service on right now. So there's there is some pain ahead in the sense that we've lived so far beyond our means for such a long time. Someone is going to have to make hard decisions. And no politician wants to make hard decisions, but I suspect this president may make some of those hard decisions and pay for it in public opinion, certainly, but things that probably need to be done for the long-term benefit of business owners. So I think there's reason for hope. We'll see what happens, but I'm certainly optimistic for my company.
Amazing. Awesome, man. Well, I have one last question, and then I'll let you be. When we look at type of business model you have, opportunities, in the future, for Imperial, a growing team, hope for business in 2025, which I'm not sure how that would affect your business, especially at an international level. But what is your hope for the future for Imperial? Is this something that you want to build, grow, sell? What does
Yeah, it's an interesting,
Paramount
I mean, it's an interesting question. I have other businesses that I intend to sell. I built them with the exit in mind, because Imperial is kind of the hub of all things for me. It feels like something I'll keep in my possession, because it's the housing of all of our relationships, right? It's like I own a CRM software company. I own, a solar electric company. There's a lot of different stuff that you can do as an entrepreneur that doesn't necessarily pertain to your central business. But in a lot of ways, it's that central business that enables the relationships you need in other areas. So, Imperial to me is just the hub. It's just the kind of the entry point for the relationships that we have. Whether we send those relationships to others or whether we hold them, to me, I just focus, like I said, on building and maintaining good, authentic relationships, and being as good of a servant as I can to those that are under our care, and never forgetting that it is the long-term relationships that build long-term success and not just short-term gain.
It's good. It's really good, man. You snuck this in, and the research that I've done, I haven't figured this out. How many businesses do you own, man? I would have been asking about these too.
Oh yeah, I own several, but I as part of your strategy for entrepreneurialism, it's you have to decide how they work well with each other, and they they bounce off. I mean, we can certainly have a conversation about that another time, and just you find out in business what works and what doesn't. You find out ways you can diversify yourself and diversify your time. And, ultimately, like I said earlier, for me, it's a question not of having a really good long-term plan, but of having the freedom to take the afternoon off and go see a movie with my kids, or, the ability to go spend 3 days in London. And, of course, that happens in part because I have a great support system at home. I mean, I have a great wife, takes care of our kids, make sure they have everything they need. And they do travel with me a good bit. So, it's a really unique space, but we enjoy it, and it's really fulfilling too. So really grateful for the chance to share about it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your time, brother. Appreciate all the information, all the wisdom and experience shared, man. Is there anywhere to follow you, man? Anywhere somebody can just, I guess, follow along with what you do?
I mean, I'm on X and Instagram, same handle, Zachary G. Freeman, ZACHARY, and happy to connect with anybody. Our website is imperial-media.com. You won't find that much on it, but contact form, we're referral only. So we love that, and we'd love to meet any of you guys that come through Drake.
Yeah, amazing, man. Well, thank you for your time, brother. We'll be in touch. We'll tag you all in all the content. And yeah, man, happy holidays, and tell the family I said hello.
All right. Thanks, Drake.
Have a good one.